Did you know that it takes on average 200 swipes for a guy to get one single coffee date? So I get it. You're exhausted. You're sick of dating apps. You're done with girls blowing you off. You're done with wasting your time, but you don't know what else to do. Because this is how people date now. This is the world of dating. Well, in this episode, we are going to uncover the best way to ask a girl out, how to make dating fun again, yes, and how to make sure that you are dating intentionally. Because it's time to start dating focused on what you want, not being focused on wondering if you are what she wants. Welcome back to The Naked Connection. This is the show that supports driven men to reach sexual mastery and build deep connections. What's up, my guys? It's Kirsten, your soon-to-be licensed sex therapist. And in order to have this conversation about dating today, I invited Talia Koren onto the show. Talia speaks to hundreds of women every single day about dating, and she is here to reveal exactly what women want from you in dating and in relationships, and really how you can start getting what you want when it comes to dating. So you guys, let's get some. Talia Koren, welcome to the Naked Connection. We are so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to get right into it and hear from your experience in the dating world. What is the landscape of dating like right now? It's 2024. How's it
Yeah.
looking?
It's a little rough out there, I'm not gonna lie. I think, I am no longer dating. I am engaged at this moment. But I talk to people, hundreds of people every week about this. So from what I'm hearing, it is really tough on the apps. People are just craving in-person experiences. They are seeking more in-person experiences out. And I think people are starting to get fed up with like just the repetition. And I think that's unavoidable. So I really hope I can inspire people to have more fun with it. But that's like how I would describe the dating landscape right now. It's just kind of like there's a little bit of burnout feeling. I think with the pandemic, also the post-pandemic, like where we are right now, it's like
Yeah.
in the pandemic, we only had the apps, and now we're kind of the pendulum is swinging the other way. So the apps are like, ugh,
Mm.
no more.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's kind of this concept or like this experience that I have experienced that I know people have experienced where you go through this swing with the apps where you download the apps, you're on them, you get tired of them, you delete them. You don't know what to do, so you re-download them. You get tired of them, you delete them. So for anyone, like for any guy that's going through that process, what would you say?
Stop deleting the app. Deleting the apps are not going to make them better than you're going to come back. Like
Yeah.
there's no point in I really don't think there's any point in deleting the apps at all. Like you can
Mhm.
take a break from them, of course, but I feel like there's some kind of like F you, I'm deleting you vibe. It's like an ego thing when you're deleting it, but you know you're going to come back. Like try and make peace with the fact that sometimes it's tough out there. Sometimes no one's responding to you, no one's matching with you, and that's just how it is. But deleting the app is not the answer.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. And you touched on something like the point about it being tough out there. I know I was looking at studies specifically with, the success for men on dating apps, and it was something like only the top 10% of men on dating apps are getting 90% of women's attention. So if you're not in that top 90% or 10, if you're the
Yeah.
bottom 90%, it's rough.
Yes. And my audience for dating intentionally is mostly women. So I really push like date outside your type, please. You're ignoring like instead of focusing on top 10%, why don't we broaden it to like the top 17%? Like, it's like there's
Yeah.
still amazing people in that top 15, 20%. You don't need like I've been encouraging women to just not be so nitpicky. And
Mhm.
it's hard because as women, we do have a lot more options in that way. Like we can be nitpicky, but we are missing out on amazing people by seeing one thing and making an assumption and then nope, left. And it's like, no, if you're on the fence, swipe right. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder because when you open your horizons to other possibilities beyond what you is considered like we all have our own specific type, it can be hard to be attracted to that. So, how can we practice or step into being more attracted to things that we typically aren't?
I encourage folks to think about the idea that attraction can come later. It doesn't have to smack you in the face. And we've all probably experienced an attraction that just like hits us like a truck. But that's not necessarily going to lead you to the partner that's going to be a great match for you in the long term. Like you need to be connecting on many other levels other than attraction. So I always want people to just not freak out or like write something off too quickly if they don't feel like they want to make out with that person or they can't imagine themselves having sex with that person. It doesn't necessarily mean it's doomed. You know, give it
Mhm.
3, 4 dates and then make that decision. Because sometimes, like when you have a friend or a coworker who like you didn't really notice at first, and one day you see them do something, you hear them say something, and you're like, oh, you're kind of cute actually, and it's like
Mhm.
that. Like you need to allow that to happen.
Mm. Yeah, I've definitely had I think you can have one of two experiences. The more time you spend with someone, the more attractive they become, or the more time you spend with someone, the less attractive they become.
Oh, can I tell you, I'm having this, okay, obviously I'm engaged, but like I'm having this experience with my personal trainer who is a very attractive man. But as I've gotten to know him more, I like not that it matters, I'm less attracted to him like as a
Yeah.
person. Because it's like, oh, you're yeah. So yes, it can go both ways.
hmm Yeah. And so I guess the lesson here is perhaps to not make the decision so abruptly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the sweet spot is if like you don't feel any ounce of attraction by date 3 or 4, then cut them loose.
Mm.
Right. I
hmm
talked to this dating expert, Evan Markatz, who also focuses more on talking to women, but he says like you can take if you feel you're at a 6 out of 10 with someone, that person could go up to a 9. But if you feel at a 3 out of 10 with attraction with someone, that person will probably never get up to even a 6. So it's like if you start kind of in the neutral range, that can go up. But if you're below the neutral, then probably will never feel attracted to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. It gives us more of a range for who we can entertain the idea of.
Yeah, and you know what it is? Like people are also really scared of wasting time. They're like, why would I go out
Yes.
with someone who I'm not attracted to? And it's like you need to let things play out. Like go in with curiosity, lower the stakes. Like it's just one date. It's not your waste of your life. Like you're not
hmm
gonna trip and fall into the wrong relationship. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there does feel like such a time element in dating about whether it's wasting time, losing out on other things because of this, or like the pressure to speed things up. Or, yeah, there's just so much around that that I think makes it challenging.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I know that you have one of like, I don't know, it's a concept, but an area that you have been really well versed in is focusing on more of what an individual wants, like what as if a guy's listening to this, like focusing more on what he wants as opposed to what the other person wants. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I think this is how you date intentionally is you have to do the inner work, whether that's with a therapist or on your own, journaling, reflecting, talking with people like your peers about what is really important to you in a relationship. Like at the end, if you had to choose 4 or 5 things and you couldn't choose anything else, what are they going to be? And
Mm,
that's what you lead with, right? And when you meet someone who isn't that, you're not trying to change them into the person who meets those needs that you have. You're going to accept them for who they are, and if they're not what you need, you're going to walk away. And that actually makes speeds up the process a lot more because I think a lot of us when we lead with attraction and chemistry, we're trying to like fit that person into what we're looking for, but they're just not that person. We see it all the time on reality TV. Do you watch Love Island or anything?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so what happens on these shows is like all the men and women are introduced to each other, and the first question is like, "What's your type?" And they mean physical type, like, "Oh, I usually go for the blondes. I usually go for the
Uh,
whatever." And then they get together based on that, and then all the drama happens because they're choosing based on looks, not on compatibility. So they clash, and that's why we love watching it because it's really entertaining. But like, but like that's so it's like we have to flip it and put the compatibility parts first.
mm,
And then we end up getting to the no faster with people. It's like for me, when I'm really big on travel. So if I went on a date with a guy and he said, He never left the country and he never wanted to. Okay, that's fine. That's your thing. Not for me. I did not have a second date with him because I'm like, I'm not going to change him into someone who wants to travel. He was
Yeah.
really attractive. He was really funny, smart, all the things. It's like, no, not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when we're out dating, you're learning these things along the way. And sometimes because it doesn't fit the narrative that you want, because maybe let's say the person's really hot and they're really all of these things, but you just pretend like you didn't hear that. You're like, I didn't actually hear that they don't like to travel because they fit all of these boxes. And then 6 months later, you haven't listened. And now you're in a
Right.
situation where they don't even have a passport and you want to go somewhere.
Yeah. And it's like, or like, yeah. And I already did that
Yeah.
in a relationship. But there's the other side of it though, of like you meet someone who you think is incredible and you kind of put them on a pedestal and then you try to
Mhm.
become the person you think they want. And that's also where we lose ourselves along the way because you're
Yeah.
not being authentic. And then, that's the premise of every rom-com, you know? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just actually having a conversation literally yesterday with a man who said he was like, he's taking a break from dating. He's kind of in that I'm done with it phase. And he was saying, women will ask me, oh, like, what do you look for in a girl? And he's like, and then I'll tell them. And then they'll fill that for a few months. And then who they really are comes out. And so
Yeah.
in those kind of situations, it's so hard because you want to communicate what you desire, but also those don't really work out. That's not the route to go.
Yeah, it's tough because we can't control other people. We can't make someone be themselves. We can only make the environment comfortable enough for someone to feel like they can be themselves. That's like really all we can do.
Yeah.
So if a woman is showing up trying to fit a mold that she thinks this guy wants, then that's not really his fault.
Yeah.
Like hopefully like one of them will recognize it and then it'll end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that happens as well. Like if a guy meets a really beautiful, smart, funny, all of the things woman and knows what she's ultimately looking for and really it isn't him, not in a bad way, just in a different way. And he tries to
Yeah.
fill that. How can we stop that from happening? How can we recognize it before it starts unfolding and like say goodbye to this person?
Yeah. So I think it's about getting real with yourself about who you are and what you want and just it's hard. This is not easy to do, but it's like being clear. It's like, okay, I want this, and this person's saying they want it too, but I'm feeling something's off about this. So I'm going to keep digging a little bit and I'm going to get more curious. This happened to me in my dating journey too. Like I met this great guy, like literally he was one person I thought was amazing partner material for me, but he had just gotten out of a 10-year relationship and I was the first person he met. And that immediately was like, you know what? If I was this guy's friend, I would tell him to keep dating.
Yeah.
And he kept being like, no, 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 I really like you. Like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I was just kind of like, no, there is no way you're ready for this. Like, or what I want. Like, I was single for a year at that point. I was ready, to be in a relationship. And ultimately, we got there. It was like, yeah, he was like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to Burning Man. I want to be single for Burning Man. I'm like, of course you do. Like, who wouldn't? Like,
Yeah.
so we ended up breaking off, and he did come back a few months later, being like, okay, I'm ready. But I was already with my now fiance. So,
Mm.
um, but like that was something I recognized of like, you know what, he's acting like a boyfriend, but I know he's only acting like a boyfriend because that's all he knows. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so you do have to be able to pick these things up and really focus. I always say focus on the facts. We all do these fantasies, right? And projections of what we project our fantasies on other people, on the relationship where we want it to go. And then you're just completely missing the reality of it all.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you just said that. Yeah, we start telling ourselves a story that isn't even true.
Yep.
And then we put that story of what we want onto somebody and we don't even know them really. And
Yes.
and I mean, it takes a while to actually know somebody. So even in 3 or 4 dates, you really don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so interesting how our brains do that.
I don't, yeah, it's like it's the hope of it all. It's the like we want the beautiful love story and we can all have it. It's just like we need to focus on the reality of it. And
Yeah.
it's our lives aren't movies. They're not written, they're not produced, you know. That's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I always call like rom-coms and things like that. I'm like, that is it's chick porn, basically.
Yeah.
And it's not real.
Yeah.
And we should probably recognize that. Well, and all of these things kind of sound to me a little bit not like these aren't red flags. It's just flags of this isn't it.
Yeah, it's just kind of missteps. It's just like on it's
Yeah.
just honest mistakes we all make and we learn from them, right? And we that like one thing that I always encourage people to do is to keep some kind of journal or take notes about your dates and for yourself in your phone or
Mhm.
somewhere so that you can recognize these patterns. Like you can really start to see, oh, did I sabotage this with my fantasy? And then they didn't live up to the fantasy and then I left because I realized they're a real person with flaws. Like,
Yes.
it's like you have to have that self-awareness to have success in dating and
Mhm.
realize what you are doing. Because again, we can't control what other people do, but you only can just focus on what you're doing, what you're bringing to the equation.
Yeah. And I would imagine after a date, let's say a guy is wanting to meet someone and have something intentional instead of wondering, does she like me? Being like, did I even like her?
Yes.
Like, how did
Yes.
I feel around her? What were my thoughts that were going through my head when I was with her? Like, looking at it as an observer as instead of an experiencer is what it
Yes,
sounds like.
there is a lot of dating for validation happening. And
Mm,
I think men and women, everyone feels that like from like it's like, oh, you get a match, you chat, but then you never meet because they just wanted the validation of the match, right? Or
mhm,
you go on a
mhm.
first date and then you never have a second one because they just wanted the validation of the first date.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of that. So I'm always encouraging people to be the chooser, see if you like them. Don't worry, assume they like you. Just blanket assumption. That's a safe assumption to make until they say otherwise, or like if their actions clearly show they're not into you.
Mm,
So
mhm,
focus on if you like them. I mean, that was one of the biggest lessons I took in my journey that helped me the most, for sure.
I love that. Yeah. And so just knowing that you have your podcast for dating, you've been doing this for a number of years now, you speak to women all day long, every day about dating. What would you say are, I don't know if they're like misconceptions or assumptions that men might make about women that you wish that they knew?
Let me think about this. Okay, misconceptions men make about women.
Yeah,
Okay.
in dating. That you're like, oh God, I wish that a guy just knew this.
I mean, I just wish guys knew that women are really expecting you to ask them out. Like, I
Okay.
mean, it's
Yeah.
really just like what I hear over and over is like we're texting and he just isn't asking for another date and it's confusing because it's like why would you text someone for
Mm,
anyone? Why would you text someone that you're not interested in seeing again? Are you just texting? Like what's happening? I think that's one of the biggest complaints I hear. But it's like, okay, if you as a guy, like you're listening to this and you're in second date zone with someone else that you're not into them, stop texting them. Like, don't be
yeah.
confusing, you know?
Yeah.
And that, look, this is advice for anyone. I always say this to women too. It's like you don't have to wait for the guy to ask, but I think a lot of women just really want the guy to ask in straight dating. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I would agree with that. For any guy that's single that's listening to this, go for it.
yeah. And then the other,
Be bold. And I think that because if she's interested in you, she will love that you did that. And if she's not
yes,
interested in
she'll
you,
say no, and
you'll be
then
able to tell.
yeah, it'll should just, I mean, I'm telling people just, I have like anti-ghost text pinned to
Hmm.
my page. It's like, just send a short text being like, thank you for the invite. I am not interested. I'm not feeling the connection. I wish you the best. And then most people respond really well to that. I have gotten some screenshots from people of men being total sore losers about it and just being like, well, I didn't like you either. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, come on, we're better than that. Um, and then the other thing, I recently posted what's your biggest ick in dating on my feed. And I think the
Mhm.
most common one about men was men who don't ask questions or just talk about themselves. And it's like, I get you're trying to impress your date. Like, I understand where that comes from. You're trying to impress your date, no matter who you are. You want to show them how great you are. You want to show them how funny you are. But it's like, you got to let the other person talk. It's like, I've heard the
Mhm.
advice to aim to talk 30% of the time, and then you will probably naturally be at 50%.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I actually recently did a podcast episode about some dating tips, and one of them is to have an like I use the analogy that we're playing tennis. We're not like at the batting cages, we're volleying back and forth. And I love that. Aiming for 30%, you'll probably hit 50. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I think that in a lot of ways that talkativeness can come from nerves. It can come
Yes.
from the desire to, yeah, be like, oh, I need to tell you all of the amazing things about myself because I want you to like you. I want you to like me. And like, those are really good intentions. So we just need to kind of
Yeah.
recalibrate it a little
Or
bit.
like fear of an awkward silence is another one that I hear a lot, which is, yeah,
Mm.
like valid. It's kind of scary. And also want to say, like, men have had this complaint about women too, that it's like they don't ask questions or they just talk about themselves
Yeah.
a lot. So it's not just guys. I think I just hear it more because obviously my audience is mostly women. So it's like
Yeah.
they're mostly talking about guys. But
Yeah.
I think also the questions thing is a big one that comes up a lot. And my explanation is that I don't know what you think. Let me hear what
Mhm.
you think about this. But I believe that men are not socialized to ask questions in social settings, like inner world questions that women really like to answer,
Mhm.
like, and ask between themselves. Like if you're hanging out with your girlfriends, you're gonna have like very deep conversations probably, but like if you ever just see guys hanging out, they're talking about stuff. They're talking about like gear and like TV and the sports and politics, and like they're not really talking. My fiance said it takes 3 hours for someone to ask about someone's relationship when they're hanging out with their closest
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
And so I think women expect that they're gonna get like these deep questions because they're asking deep questions, but I don't think guys naturally do that. And I'm always telling women, like, it doesn't mean they're not interested.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait to be asked to share something.
Hmm.
So yeah. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think? Am I right or do you think I'm off?
Yeah, no, I think that if we were to make like a broad generalization of it, yeah, I definitely think that when women get together, we want to dive into all of the details and talk about our feelings and our thoughts about things, and that isn't necessarily as accessible for a lot of men, and a lot of men, don't even have that circle. I was reading some
Yes.
studies about how I can't remember the exact stat, but it was like a high percentage of young men don't have a best friend or could even name, like saying that they have close friends. So there's even this missing link of connection that they're having, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about working with men, and why I love
Yes.
having guests like you on the show, because you have all of this insight from women to bring to them. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's a good insight as well to consider. Maybe even I would imagine, like, thinking of a list of questions before, like sitting down one day and just kind of getting curious about what could be some deeper questions I could ask a girl that I
Well, even
actually am
better than
interested.
that, like
Yeah.
on that, think about what you are looking for and find questions based on that. Like if you are looking
Mm.
for someone family oriented, you can ask them like what are your favorite things to do with your family? How have you spent time with your family this year? Like
Mhm.
that's where the question should come from, not just like a random, like if you Google like questions to ask is like the dumbest questions ever.
Yeah, don't do that. I love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really tailored more to each
Yeah.
person, because we all care about different things and we all want to know different things about somebody. So yeah, I love
And then
that.
another tip for dating that I really like is like bring up and ask questions around topics that you are excited to talk about that light you up because that's attractive, right? Seeing someone light up on a date is
Mhm.
always fun. And then seeing if they also light up or not, like if they're interested. So whatever it is, like don't be shy about your interests.
Yeah.
Like every guy I've ever dated plays Dungeons and Dragons. I don't play, but it's fun to hear them talk about it. You
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we love seeing a man that's passionate.
Yes.
I don't know anyone who thinks I want a not passionate person. So
Right. Like
yeah.
nerd out about something. It's hot, and you'll get into non-surface level conversations if you're bringing that on a date.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of reminds me of this idea of making dating fun again. Understanding that, in the beginning of this episode, starting off by the recognizing the heaviness, the darkness, the
Yeah.
exhaustion, the burnout, the endless swiping, the date's not unfolding. I think it's something like it takes a man on average 200 swipes to get one coffee date. It's just kind of insane what is unfolding, but I think that there's a lot of hope. So how can we make this process fun again?
Yes. I can think, okay, first of all, when it comes to dating apps, I think they need to be seen as a supplement. Like you don't just be on dating apps, like also be open to connections in real life, right? So whoever's listening, like go deep on your interests and hobbies, go make connections. You never know who could like set you
Mm-hmm.
up or like bring you to a barbecue and then there's a girl there. Like you never know, so it's like
Mm-hmm.
really not just leaning on apps, I think is important. And it'll make you feel better too. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
only focus on apps where statistically it's not going to go
Mm-hmm.
very well, you're going to feel like crap. But if you are also out in the world, like you will feel like a little more balanced there. So that's one thing. And
Yeah.
also, if you're pursuing your interests for you, you're going to have a great time anyway. Cause like you, whatever, pickleball
Yeah.
or like surfing or whatever you're into, it's like you're just doing it because you like it. And maybe you'll meet someone, you
Yeah.
know? I met
Yeah.
so many people at the bouldering gym. Like that was the easiest place to talk to people. All the guys were really attractive. They're like climbing and it's easy to talk to people. So like and also like you could just make friends. So that's just tip number one.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with dates. It's like, okay, for a first date, more of a vibe check. You want to keep it short, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think if you are trying to set up a lot of dates, it can get exhausting if you and also expensive for guys if you are doing
Yeah.
dinner and everything. Like just coffee and a walk is perfect. Or happy hour drinks, love it. We love a happy hour. Um, and then after the vibe check, then you can do something fun. It doesn't have to be dinner. Like you can go. I'm a big believer in dynamic dates, meaning like dates where you're moving, you're not just statically sitting
Mm-hmm.
across from each other. So like bouldering was a big one for me, going on a hike. Anything that you really want to do that isn't sitting and talking across from each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It makes so much more opportunity to engage with the world. It's more enjoyable. And
Yes.
I love getting out and doing things that you love because like you said, even if you don't meet someone there, at least you just spent the last 3 hours doing something that you love. And
Not behind a screen,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, gotta get back out into the world. And I think, like you were saying earlier, people are really craving that in real life, that in-person connection. And I think that it puts you instantly light years ahead of anybody that some girl is just swiped on because they've
Yes.
met you, they've experienced you, they know what your energy is like, they've engaged with you. So there's so much more information that you have about each other from real life.
Yeah. I mean, the real life challenge is that you don't know if they're straight or gay, or you don't know if how old they are. You
Yes.
don't know if they're married. Like there's a lot of other things happening. I accidentally went on a date with someone who had a girlfriend. He didn't think it was a date. I thought it was a date. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like, yeah.
You're like, oops.
Yeah. I was like, oh, you're an author? I'm an author. Let's get coffee. And I like totally thought I was flirting, but I guess he didn't really pick that up. And in the middle of the day, I was like, you have a girlfriend, don't you? Like, I just kind of knew. Um,
Well, yeah, I'm okay. I was totally going to ask about this because it is true. When we're in real life, there's a level of ambiguity that you now have to navigate. Is this
yes.
person, first of all, interested in me? Are they at the same sexual orientation that I am? Are they in a relationship? Are they single? Are they in an open relationship? There's,
Yeah.
are they looking to date? Like,
Right. They might
so
not
much is
even, yeah.
unfolding. So I am like, how do we navigate that? Because I think sometimes, guys will be really forward and say, "Hey, do you have a boyfriend?" And
That's a little
that's a
weird. That's
little
because
bit,
it's a little
it's
too
a little
much.
jarring, I
Yeah.
think, like, and very abrupt. And I appreciate the straightforwardness of that. Truly, I'm like, oh, okay, we're getting to the point. Cool. And I'm wondering, like, are there other ways that we can figure
Yes.
it out?
Yes, I think, well, my go-to is always bringing up dating apps, right?
Mm,
If I meet someone, because I always found a way to fit it in. It's like, oh, are you on the
yeah.
apps here? Like, just because I thought it's fun. I also think it's fun to talk about dating apps with people who are like locals. It's like, what do you think? What's the flavor here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that was my way of bringing it up. I think for also you could just like instead of asking, do you have a boyfriend, you could ask them out or ask for their number, and then that gives them the opportunity to be like, I'm actually in a relationship. You know,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
they need to. if they're in a relationship, like ideally they're speaking up, like
Hmm.
especially to the guy I asked out at the farmer's market, not knowing the end girlfriend.
Yeah. 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 And I think too, there's this rejection piece of that, right? No one wants to be
Okay,
rejected.
but
No
like,
one wants
wait,
to be
well,
told no.
okay, hold up. But if someone says no to you because they are taken,
Yeah.
that's not really a real rejection.
Yeah. And that
That's
was
not about you.
exactly. And so it's, I think, getting like building that rejection muscle and also recognizing, yeah, if someone's in a relationship, I would hope that they're going to reject you,
Also,
right?
let's
Like,
reframe this. Let's just reframe. If
yeah.
you ask out someone and they say no, you just made their day anyway.
Mm,
Like they're gonna be so flattered and happy that someone is interested in them, even though they're not interested or they're taken. Like that's
yeah.
still if you, as long as you're doing it in a respectful way, obviously,
Yeah.
like a nice like a calm way, but
Mhm.
not do you have a
Yeah.
boyfriend? Like that's a little creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. It's more like a compliment than
yes, yeah,
anything. And
yeah.
yeah. And whether someone wants to take that or not is there for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also you get points for putting yourself out there. Like go you. It's gonna be
Hmm.
easier next time, even if they say no.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Okay. I would love to do some scenarios with
Oh,
you.
okay, I'm ready.
Um, so I was thinking about some different scenarios that men might find themselves in the dating space, and I would love to hear what your guidance would be on this. So the first
Okay.
one I was thinking of is that a guy is going out with a girl, he's really into her, and she seems interested in him. Like she's been going out with him, she's saying yes, but he's planning everything, he's paying for everything, he's putting all of the energy in to initiate everything, and this has been going on for a while now. What would you say?
So obviously his desire here is he wants her to put more effort in, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking like if she is not in if
If
she's just
okay.
kind of like very passive about the whole thing and just like receiving.
Okay. Okay. Well, first, I would get aligned on intentions. Like, what is her intention in with dating? What is your intention? Like, see if you're even on the same page there. Like, are you in the same universe of what you're looking for right now? Because if she's just like casual and like of course it's like okay yeah you're fine I'll hang out with you I'm not whatever or maybe she is really like seriously dating you so that's
Mm-hmm.
number one. Two, if two call her out like
Yeah.
and you could do this in a way that's like more of a invitation of like hey like I would really love it if you plan the next one. I'm curious to see what your ideas are, right? It's not
Mm.
like you don't plan anything, it's
Uh,
I am curious to see what you would plan for us, you know? What
I
what do you
love
have
that.
up your
Yeah.
sleeve, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um and hopefully her reaction would be like, "Oh yeah, of course." And then
Uh,
maybe you could talk about it, be like, "I've actually noticed this imbalance, and did you notice it? What do you think? What like you have to talk about each other's expectations. Like
mhm.
maybe this girl expects the guy to plan everything, and that might not sit well with this guy. Like
Mhm.
he might want more of an equal partner, and they're just
Yeah.
not a match.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the considerations of that, of the compatibility, and
Yeah.
also how to bring it up in a way that doesn't have to be super confrontational,
No, it
but
could
it's
be
also a
kind
little
of
bit of like a challenge.
yeah, it's a challenge, or it's like yeah, it could be kind of a joking, funny, like I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this serious, heavy thing at first.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Love it. All right. So now let's say that they've been dating for a few months. This guy's been seeing, he's out on dates, he's seeing a handful of women, and he's really starting to recognize that he really likes two women. But he's at a point where he needs to make a decision.
Been there.
How, and it's tough because he like loves the qualities about one of them, loves these other qualities about the other, could really see a potential in both of them, or just really wants to continue to pursue both of them, but knows he needs to make a choice.
Okay, I think the first thing is who does he feel more comfortable with? Like, who
Mm,
does he feel more himself around? Who does he feel more like he could just be at ease with? That's really if for a long-term partnership, that's the number one, right?
mm,
In that scenario. If they already check all the other boxes, it's like, well, okay, who do you feel more comfortable with?
mm, mm-hmm.
Um, And then I'd also be, if it's like for a while, it's like, who have you had conflict with and how did that go? That's usually another
Mm,
really good clue of how a relationship will go. What, do you feel comfortable enough to talk about things that are hard to talk about or not? And that is a clue. So those are the two
mm.
things I would really consider at that point
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
when you're like splitting hairs.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been there. Like I was at that point with my fiance. I had two guys. I had him. His nickname was Green Bubble, and I had Blue Bubble because the other guy was an iPhone person. He's an
Uh,
Android. So I had been on like 5 dates with them each or something, and then I just felt I was like I have to make a decision, and I just felt like I had double booked a Saturday with both of them.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I actually am really more excited to see Green Bubble. So I canceled
Mm.
on Blue Bubble and I said, I'm not interested anymore.
Wow.
Because I knew
Yeah.
I wasn't dreading that date, but I just wasn't looking forward to it as much. Even though it was a really
Mhm.
fun date. We were gonna go blueberry picking. Like so cute. You know? And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how that I made that decision.
Yeah. Oh, I like that of look how to look at both of them from those
Yeah.
different lenses. I'm even thinking of it's the question of who would you be more sad to lose to?
I guess. Yeah, that could work. But then it's like, what if it's a sex thing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's where it's
Yes.
like don't go for the person that you necessarily have the best sex with because that person might not necessarily be the best partner for you long term.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
know it's hard to hear, but it's true.
Hmm. Yeah, and people can get better at sex.
Yes, I think it's one of the easier
So,
things to improve in a
yeah.
relationship. Like if you have a baseline of compatibility, like yeah, it can,
Yeah. Yeah, I think can you communicate with each other? I think it's a little bit harder I mean, depends, but
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Next scenario.
I
Let's
love
say
these.
that he has been dating someone that's really awesome. Everything is going great. They're super into one another. And he finally meets her friends and they're horrible. They're like, it's his worst nightmare. He has a really hard time connecting with them, being around them, doesn't really want to be around them. What
Mm,
what does one do?
this one's tough. I mean, I think it depends. I would have a talk with the girl, like what are her expectations around him being with hanging out with friends? Is this girl like,
Mhm.
oh, every time I go out with my friends, like you're gonna come? Or is it like, no, I like to
Yeah.
be with my girls and like maybe like once a quarter we might get together for something. Like what are you actually getting into? And what are the expectations? That's number one. Then from
Mhm.
there you can decide. I also would I think honesty is the best policy. I'd be honest with the girl being like, hey, like I actually don't click with your friends. Like what do you think? And just kind of talk through that.
Mhm.
Why? Like, what does she think about that? Like, just like, could she finesse it with them? Like, there might be some way to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I made these scenarios up, but as you were talking, I was thinking too about how, like, I know how we can be as girls. Like, when we all get together, it's
Yeah.
mayhem. And so perhaps what would it be like to spend time with just a couple of them? Or maybe are you in an environment where it's guys and girls? Or, like what are the different
Yeah. That's why I
possibilities?
mean, like, the expectations. Like, when I moved to the Bay Area with my fiance, he was like, yeah, we're going to have dinner with my friends every Wednesday. And at
Mm.
first I was like, what?
Yeah.
Every Wednesday? And because these people, his friends are all PhDs like him and they're all engineers. I barely graduated college. Like I don't really necessarily fit it academically. So I was really worried about that, but I love it. Now I love it.
Yeah.
Like after a couple months, I was like, this is so nice. I love this so much. So like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can come around like with my ex also like his friends and I did not click at all. I don't think they like me at all.
Mm.
But then by the end of our relationship, which was 6 years, like we were really tight. So it can also don't I think the first impression needs to be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. And final
Okay.
scenario. A guy goes on a first date and okay. A guy goes on a first date and he met a girl on an app and they meet in person and immediately he can tell it's not that he's been catfished necessarily, but clearly her photos were really edited, really filtered, old, whatever, from years past. And he isn't interested in her, but wants to be polite and doesn't want her to, have that. I know a handful of guys that have had this experience and they're like,
Yes.
I literally don't know what to do, but I don't want to be an asshole and call her out or leave or, whatever it is.
You just have the drink. Just a drink can take 30 minutes, right?
Mhm.
One drink and then you peace out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because look, okay, if you know you're not into this person, and, like I agree. Like I think the reason why most second dates don't happen is because people's photos don't reflect an accurate representation of who they are today. And
Hmm.
that's for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think that's like if you're on the apps, please have accurate photos because even if you've gained weight, like we don't know that. Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
meeting you for the first time. We don't know. So just put the accurate pictures on because then you're more likely to, it's like, okay, cool. I can trust this person because they look like their pictures. Next, let's just get into the conversation. So yeah, I would say have the drink, close out your tab, and go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And move on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's a
appreciate
that's a
that.
polite way. I mean, I don't really know a polite way to dip out. I mean, I think it's if you make up an excuse or have like a quote unquote emergency call to bring you out of the
Yeah.
date, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that is ever under the radar. I think everyone can
Yeah.
sniff that out pretty quickly. Amazing. Well, okay, Talia, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think would be really important for all of these amazing men to hear?
Um, I mean, okay, so one piece of advice, I don't know where this comes from, but like men will be like, we should never be vulnerable or something. Like they're getting advice from somewhere that they shouldn't be vulnerable and that their
Mm,
vulnerability will be used against them. And I'm like, no, we
mm,
want to see the vulnerable side. We want to know that you're emotionally intelligent. Like if you want someone to trust you, you have to come in with trust as well. So it's like
mm.
show these parts of yourself. Talk a little bit about what you're worried about or what's going on that's like not necessarily the most fun to talk about because we'll see you as like it's like we all have this shit to deal with. It's okay to
Mm.
to just open up a little bit on dates and give us a little more and not
Yeah.
be so guarded. Like I think that's like would be and that's what I would say to anyone, dating. Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of us date from a very guarded place, which makes it not less fun. And it's like, no, when you're open and you trust it, no matter what people say or do, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna go home. The life will go on, it's gonna be all right. Yeah. So that's my
Yeah.
advice. Just like don't be afraid to show us more of yourself on dates.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think we can all take from that to be a little bit more open and a little
Yeah.
less guarded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Well, Talia, where can everybody find you, learn more about all of the beautiful advice that you share? I know your Instagram is really fun and you have your own podcast.
Yes.
So
Yeah, please come hang out with me. You can slide into my DMs at any time at dating.intentionally. And my podcast is called Dating Intentionally. My audience is mostly women, but guys are welcome too. I mean, I have lots of guys that I talk to every day as well. So come on
amazing.
over.
Well, I feel like this is a great place for guys to find girls that maybe would be interested in dating them intentionally.
Yes.
So perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.